Let's speak with Lord John Walney, His Majesty's Government's advisor on political violence and disruption and former Labour MP. John, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian.
Did you have one of those moments, a shiver up the spine, when you were listening to Starmerism in action? Did you think this is the new philosophical leader of our times? What did you make? What did you make of his 90-minute speech?
I think my reaction was probably somewhere between that and your reaction to it. So okay. I'm certainly more positive than much of the commentary coming out. I do have a real level of sympathy for the government, given genuinely the scale of the mess that they have left behind now. And I also recognise that for the public, it's like, well, yeah, whatever, but we elect you to fix stuff, and so get on and do it. And I think that the importance of this speech will not probably be in whether it sets alike the public, who frankly have heard a lot from governments of different hues about things that are going to be done. It'll be whether it does have a galvanising effect to the system to actually get the government working better, because they know that this Labour government knows that it will be judged on whether people have a bit more faith in not just their government, but the very idea of a government being able to do stuff and act on their priorities. That hasn't been happening for a good number of years. Lots of reasons for that, but I think it was significant that there was a strong message to the civil service as part of that. Now, clearly, the incoming ministers have rightly identified that the system just isn't properly set up at the moment, particularly to work across departments. So many of these challenges to improving people's lifestyles, health, they go beyond one department of health or education or another one working on its own bit. People have got to work together better, and it has never been, or for many years, it has not been government strength to be able to look across the piece and deliver that. So let's hope that it gets stuff moving along those fronts.
Yeah, when it's, I mean, obviously look, it's a political speech. We can always pull out the platitudes in there. I want to make people's lives better. But, you know, when somebody on social media says, I hate bullies or something like that, well, we all hate bullies. No, you know, I believe in justice and things like that. Well, we all believe in justice. So there's a bit of that in there. I'll cut him some slack on that one, John. But I was slightly surprised that immigration, bearing in mind there is a reasonable body of thought that many of the issues we have is down to immigration, and that's not a pejorative comment. It's not just about channel migrants, it's about legal immigration. You know, the sheer amount of numbers that under the last Conservative government came into this country is mind-blowing. And I know these are legal people, they were rubber stamped, they have visas, they're students, and even if you take out, you know, areas that clearly we don't want, we want to have an education industry in this country. It's worth, I think, 40 billion quid or something of that order. We get that, but many of the issues, waiting lists and housing, will clearly be linked to that of immigration. And he said nothing about immigration, not really.
And he does, and the government does need to show the country that it's addressing immigration in two ways, I think. One, I think it has got to be clearer about the ways in which certain immigration within certain sectors is actually essential for the growth that the economy is needed in the short term, for the delivery of some of the vital public services that people want fixed. And you know, if you were completely to turn off the tap of immigration tomorrow, I mean, lots of your viewers might say hooray and chance will be a fine thing, but also you would bring a number of public services to their knees overnight. You've got to be clear about the role it can play, but then also you've got to show that there is a grip on the atrocity of the boats coming over, and that has been a something that the last government completely couldn't fix. Yeah. But so much of the country is looking for a government, any government, to properly get a grip of that, and there will be peril for any administration if years down the track we are still in the mess we are in at the moment.
And in terms of the kind of other stuff like building more homes, I mean, the 1.5 million target, John, as you know, is the same as it's been, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years, even under the last lot. And people will always argue those figures as to how well they did. I think you probably have to go back to Macmillan to see, you know, a reasonable job of somebody literally delivering on that figure. But then he had his eye on a bigger prize, didn't he, at the time? That's another story. Nonetheless, I mean, is this achievable? Can it happen? We should be getting a clue by now as to whether he's on the right track with building houses.
Look, I think it can. I'm not a housing expert. I think it can. And I'm aware that this has been something that has been talked about for a long time. In this, and I think across a range of areas, I would like to see my friends in the Labour government like really drilling down on what is the reform of public services and the state which is needed to address this change, because it is not enough it is a necessary thing to fix, I think, the chaos and the lack of organisation and sometimes a lack of focus from the last government. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And in a time when money is tight, you have got to look to what are your other levers to address this. So, you know, much greater and more meaningful partnership with government, with businesses, understanding the difficulties that they're in. They need to genuinely do that, and they need to be taking apart the blockages which are there within the system, which requires a laser-like focus that they need to raise their game to do now.
Do you think in 5 years' time, as we all get ready to go to the next election, I appreciate you're a Labour man, John, but in your political gut, do you sense that this will be another landslide for the Labour government? Because it's been anything but an easy start.
Well, I think that they understand that the size of the majority does not reflect the scale of settled support in the country, and they've been humble enough to show that. And actually, on numerical terms, you can see that many of these seats are. I've got low majorities. There is a potential to lose support to the right, to an alternative left. So they've never rightly thought of themselves as secure. And that, I think, is a function of our politics at the moment, that frankly the public have got a low level of support in all authority and political parties of all hues, which increases the importance of them being able to actually show that they can deliver, despite the difficult economic backdrop, on the priorities that they've set out today.
Yeah. John, listen, thank you. Appreciate your time. He's Lord John Walney, government advisor on political violence and disruption. He's a former Labour MP, clearly a supporter of Keir Starmer, although I would say fairly, I wouldn't say thundering endorsement.